Just sit here, yeah? So, what's all this about? Thank you for taking this test. I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and I'd like you to answer quickly and clearly with your first thoughts. There are no right or wrong answers, but if it turns out you are a replicant, I will shoot you in the face. You're walking through the desert, never mind which one. You see a tortoise coming towards you. You lean down and flip the tortoise onto its back. Its belly begins to bake in the sun, and its legs flap in an effort to right itself. What do? Well, I mean, first of all, I think it's weird there's a tortoise in a desert. They don't live there. But I'd flip the tortoise back over, of course. I like tortoises. I don't want it to bake in the sun. You're watching television when a wasp flies into your room and lands on your arm. How do you react? I would shoo the wasp off my arm, making sure it doesn't sting me. And then I'd roll up a newspaper and swat it. You walk into your bedroom and see a very large, hairy spider on the wall. How does that make you feel, and how do you proceed? Oh man, I'd scream and I'd call my girlfriend. She deals with spiders. I'm terrified of them, seriously. I probably wouldn't be able to sleep that night. You find an elephant stuck down a well. How would you get it out? I would pour loads of grease down the well, so that it went all over the elephant. And then I would kind of pull the elephant out of the well by its trunk, and hopefully, you know, its fat bum would like kind of pop through the top. Bethesda announces The Elder Scrolls 6, but they also announce it's going to be full of microtransactions. How does that make you feel? As far as I'm concerned, Bethesda is on thin fucking ice. First of all, they're releasing Skyrim for every goddamn console known to man. Then they release the Creators Club, which is essentially paid mods. If they try to fuck up The Elder Scrolls 6 with microtransactions, I will go fucking mad! Which actor is more handsome and more talented? Ryan Reynolds or Ryan Gosling? Well, I mean, first of all, they're both brilliant and very handsome, talented young men. I would say that Gosling has the better acting chops, but Reynolds, I mean, you know, that guy's a beefcake. You find yourself stranded on a desert island with Katy Perry, Taylor Swift and Justin Bieber. How do you proceed? Honestly, I'd drown myself. Last but not least, I want you to tell me about your mother. You want to talk about my mother? You want to talk about my mother? You want to know about my mother? Yeah, she's a really nice person, actually. She makes me dinner every Sunday. Blade Runner 2049 is a sequel that even Hollywood didn't want to make. Made in 1982, the original film is so tight, so self-contained and so distinct that it seemed impossible for anyone to follow up. I thought maybe someone out there might be able to make a decent film set in the same universe, separate from the events of the first film, but there was no way anyone could make a direct sequel that could possibly live up to the original, until Denis Villeneuve, director of films such as Prisoners, Sicario and Arrival, did exactly that. Waiting 35 years to make a sequel would normally spell disaster for a film. Can you imagine if we'd had to wait 35 years for Aliens or The Empire Strikes Back? And yet, for Blade Runner 2049, this somehow works in its favour. 35 years after the events of the first film, Blade Runner K, played by Ryan Gosling, uncovers information regarding replicants that could spark a war between humanity and the synthetic beings. Desperate to uncover the truth, K follows clues that eventually sees him teaming up with one of the best Blade Runners of all time, Rick Deckard. Gosling has proven with films like Driver, The Nice Guys and La La Land that he's more than just a pretty face, but I think his portrayal of K may be one of the finest performances yet. His character is a man of few words, but the emotion Gosling presents in his mannerisms and expressions still allow the audience to know exactly what K is feeling. Harrison Ford has slipped back into the role of Deckard as though he never left, and I personally felt he was far more invested in his return to Blade Runner than he was for his return to Star Wars. He may be almost 40 years older, but Deckard still has plenty of grit left in him. The rest of the cast is equally good, and I was particularly impressed by Ana de Armas as Joy, as well as Dave Bautista as Morton. It really amazes me that a former WWE star is able to give such a nuanced performance. For fear of spoilers, I won't say too much, but Sylvia Hoeks' character is both alluring and intimidating. Jared Leto as Wallace is well acted, but I would like to have seen him get a little more development rather than servicing as exposition. It's too bad we didn't get to see more of what drove his character's motives, but perhaps that is being saved for the third instalment. I'm not giving away any plot points here, but suffice to say, I think 2049 manages to pull off the careful balance of telling its own story whilst not merely feeling like it's resting on the laurels of the original. The film includes a number of twists and turns, and one plot point in particular came out of the blue but made total sense. As almost 3 hours long, Blade Runner 2049 is a film that demands your time and attention, and, whilst it did feel long, it deserves both. No one can deny that 2049 is one of the best looking films ever made. You could pause the film at any moment and have an image that could hang up as art. Every set is just oozing with atmosphere, and the art direction is just as on point as it was in the original. The first film's soundtrack, composed by Vangelis, is iconic, and, despite the fact that the sequel is scored by Hans Zimmer and Benjamin Wallfisch, the soundtrack is every bit as good. I get the feeling it was planned from the outset to try to remain true to Vangelis' score, and the two composers have captured that essence brilliantly. The movie's stellar visuals, combined with its intense music, makes for compelling viewing, and you owe it to yourself to see this one on the big screen. I was very impressed at how real the world of 2049 is, and how it feels like the world hasn't just remained still for 3 decades. Don't get me wrong, there are still plenty of things you'll recognise from the original film, but the technology has moved along just as it does in real life. The original Blade Runner made us ponder the nature of identity and what it means to be human. This is a theme that's explored further than ever in 2049, and you'll find yourself questioning just how real something needs to feel before it is. The moral ambiguity is just as present here as it was in the first, and this is a film I've been thinking about a lot since the credits rolled. In fact, I've got tickets booked for a second viewing. As I mentioned earlier, at almost 3 hours, Blade Runner 2049 is a long film, but it's a film I think that earns such a running length. It takes its time to get from A to B, and this might put more casual viewers off, but ultimately I think this was the right decision, and before you ask, you should absolutely see the first one before going into 2049. This is not a soft reboot like The Force Awakens. I watched the original before going to see the sequel, then I left the cinema and instantly rewatched the first one, and now I'm going to see the second one again. Blade Runner has me completely immersed, and if you're at all interested in the first film, then you should absolutely check out the sequel. Whilst 2049 does wrap up most of the questions it asks, I certainly feel there's enough left open to warrant a third film. There's certainly more ground to be explored and more secrets to be revealed. If the same care and attention goes into a third outing, then here's hoping we don't have to wait another 35 years for it.